U.S. government's like, something's going on with Antarctica. There's some activity up there. We want to find out what's going on. So they send this cat named Admiral Byrd up to investigate.
Richard E. Byrd, first to blaze an air route to the North Pole, prepares for a similar flight over the bottom of the Earth.
For nearly 80 years, the silence has held. The files were sealed, the witnesses erased, and the man who swore an oath to Admiral Byrd carried the truth alone, until now. He says what they found under Antarctica was not ice, it was something built. A structure humming beneath the frozen ground, buried, then bombed, then forgotten. Why did a peaceful research mission bring tanks, warships, and aircraft carriers to the end of the Earth? Why did Admiral Byrd vanish from radio contact for 3 hours and return a different man? Before he died, one survivor spoke, and his story may change everything we know about our world.
Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more awe-inspiring stories of faith, survival, and miracles.
He was America's golden explorer, Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the man who had flown over both poles and lived to tell the tale. Newspapers called him fearless, a symbol of progress carved into ice. But behind that perfect smile was an obsession. Byrd believed Antarctica wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. A place that hid more than snow, a land that defied every compass and swallowed every secret. When he returned from his last flight, something inside him had changed. His eyes no longer looked at the sky, but at the ground, as if it were alive. Because somewhere beneath that endless white, something was waiting. A young sailor named Robert Johnson stood in a dim Navy office, waiting for an interview he thought was about navigation and discipline. Instead, Admiral Byrd looked him straight in the eye and asked, "Can you keep a secret?" Johnson froze. This wasn't standard protocol. No paperwork, no written orders, just a promise of silence. Byrd didn't want adventurers. He wanted men who could vanish behind locked files. Within weeks, Johnson found himself among a chosen few, boarding a ship bound for Antarctica. He was 19, proud and naive. He didn't yet know he was walking into a mystery that would define the rest of his life. Because once they sailed south, nothing was ever written down again.
The journey south began with excitement, waves cutting through endless gray, laughter echoing on deck. But as the ships neared Antarctica, the instruments began to fail. Compasses spun wildly, radios crackled, then went dead. The air itself seemed charged. One night, Johnson saw a strange light shimmer across the horizon, a glowing streak beneath the ice, pulsing faintly as if alive. Officially, it was atmospheric interference. Unofficially, it felt like the Earth itself was breathing. When they landed, even the snow looked wrong. The ground vibrated, and the mountains were black, sharp, and bare, like something had scraped the ice clean from below. Johnson felt it in his boots, the hum of something waiting beneath their feet. By 1946, the mission was no longer a quiet expedition. It was an invasion. 14 warships, 33 aircraft, tanks, and nearly 5,000 men sailed toward the edge of the world. The newspapers called it Operation Highjump. The military called it a test. But to the men on board, it felt like war. Rumors spread below deck. Whispers of German subs that vanished after the war, of secret bases beneath the ice, of something ancient that every nation wanted first. Even Byrd seemed restless, studying classified charts that never left his hands. When they reached Antarctica, the mood changed. It wasn't awe anymore. It was dread. The sky looked too still, the ice too quiet. Something out there was watching them. The orders were simple. A ground team would move into a sector marked unstable. Clear weather, perfect conditions, nothing unusual. Johnson watched them vanish into the white horizon, their sleds trailing black dots across the snow. Hours passed. No storm, no wind. Then, silence. Radios cut off mid-transmission. No static, no distress call, just gone. The official report would claim a sudden ice collapse, but Johnson was there. The air was calm, the sky empty. No one could explain how 12 men disappeared without a trace. The area was sealed within hours. Maps were redrawn, the coordinates erased. That night, officers whispered orders no one wanted to hear. Whatever swallowed those men wasn't weather, and it wasn't natural.
It was supposed to be a routine flight. Admiral Byrd himself took off that morning, his aircraft loaded with instruments and cameras. His voice crackled clearly over the radio. Altitude steady, heading confirmed. Then, without warning, silence. For 3 hours, the most advanced aircraft of its time simply vanished. No contact, no location. When Byrd finally returned, he was white as snow, his hands trembling as he stepped out of the cockpit. He refused to log his flight path. He refused to speak. The man who once spoke boldly of exploration now avoided every question. That night, a new zone appeared on the maps, uncharted, sealed, forbidden. And Byrd's eyes told Johnson everything. He had seen something alive beneath the ice. Days later, Johnson was called for a special assignment. No paperwork, no explanation. The coordinates made no sense, deep inside Antarctica's interior. When the plane touched down, he saw it immediately. A metallic ridge jutting through the ice, dull and smooth like steel. The air was strangely warm. A low hum vibrated through the ground. At its base was a perfect fissure, edges too clean, too straight to be natural. An officer descended with a safety line. Minutes later, the rope went slack. Another followed. He came back trembling, eyes wide, silent forever. The site was bombed from the air the next morning. Johnson never forgot that sound, like the earth itself trying to scream. Something down there had moved. The mission should have lasted 6 months. It ended in 8 weeks. No storm, no mutiny, just orders. Pack up, go home. Back on the ships, Johnson noticed entire files missing, flight logs stripped clean, names of lost men erased from rosters. A few officers whispered that sealed crates were loaded onto aircraft under heavy guard. When one young lieutenant kept private copies of the maps, he vanished overnight. No transfer, no goodbye. Admiral Byrd, once talkative, now stared into nothing. At a press stop in Chile, he warned of a new enemy that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speed. Then he fell silent forever. Whatever Highjump found, Washington buried it, deep, cold, and classified.
12 years later, the world suddenly agreed on something it never had before. In 1959, 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty, banning military activity, mining, or permanent settlements on the continent. Peaceful science, they said. But to Johnson, it was a lock on a door they never wanted opened again. Decades passed. Byrd died in silence. Files vanished into vaults. One by one, the men who served went to their graves. Then, at 99, Robert Johnson broke his oath. He spoke of the fissure that swallowed men whole, of stairs carved into the ice, not human, not natural. Maybe it wasn't alien, he said softly. Maybe it was ancient. And he warned the ice was shifting again. Something beneath it was waking. The interview lasted less than an hour. When it ended, Johnson sat quietly, staring past the camera as if he could still see that white horizon. Weeks later, he was gone, the last man alive who knew what really happened beneath the ice. His testimony never made headlines. No newspapers printed his name. But the footage exists. A single tape sealed away, passed between historians who fear what it might reveal. Some say it's myth. Others say satellites have since detected heat patterns where his coordinates once were. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe it was the greatest discovery ever buried. Because Antarctica still trembles, and the world still isn't ready for what's under the ice.